Just this past fall, in a video breaking down our C70 handheld rig, I said I didn't think there was any real reason to upgrade from the Canon C70 to the C80. Well, don't worry guys, I still stand by that. That said, we did recently pick up a C80, and it's a bit of a bittersweet addition to the kit. Not because it's replacing any of our C70s, but because it's replacing what's long been our favorite cinema camera of all time, the C300 Mark III. And while I could wax on and on about how this purchase reflects a larger shift in video production from professional rigs to smaller cameras, faster setups, and quicker turnarounds, or how muddied Canon cinema line has become in recent years, and how these two trends are probably connected, you're here for a video about the Canon C80, so I'll try and stay on topic. A bit of background though. Here at Outside In, we've always specialized in both high-end luxury weddings and commercial work for social-forward brands. And while long-GOP XF-AVC has always been more than enough for our wedding work, especially now that modern cameras shoot in 10-bit, we've always needed a workhorse camera in our kit, capable of shooting in RAW for our color-demanding commercial projects. This dual artistic focus has always led to gear bags that marry these two fields, and interesting gear choices like the few years I shot weddings on a Movi Pro Ready Rig combo, using our Aperture Studio setup to light speeches and first dances, or the couple of years we shot weddings in RAW for the most flexibility in post. These aren't creative choices that have lasted long, but ones that have always kept wedding filmmaking fun. After upgrading to our C70s back in 2020, we added the C300 Mark III as our commercial powerhouse. But as the C70 gained RAW recording and a more sophisticated autofocus with each firmware update, we found ourselves reaching for it in our camera bags more often. And while we absolutely love the look of the C300 and it's responsible for some of the most noteworthy shots in our portfolio, we knew in our hearts it was time to find something a little more compact for the hybrid type of work that we do, which is where the C80 comes in. If you're just here for the verdict and want to skip the deep dive, I'll save you some time. We expected to miss DGO, and we thought we'd have more reservations, but the opposite turned out to be true. We've been shooting extensively with the C80 over the past month, and I can confidently say that this is my new favorite camera, and easily one of the most inspiring pieces of gear we've added to our arsenal in recent years. I'll get into why in just a moment, but before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below so the algorithm knows we're doing something right. And if you want to see more behind the scenes of our work, our gear, and the life we're building around it all, head on over to Instagram and give us a follow. Now let's dive into the C80. Starting with its ergonomics and I/O, the first thing you'll notice is that the C80 is almost identical to the C70. Featuring the same compact cinema camera design as its predecessor, the C80 is just 1/3 of an inch taller and just shy of 1/3 of a pound heavier. We're big fans of this form factor because it gives us the flexibility to keep a low profile or build it out into a full cinema rig when the project calls for it. You'll also notice that Canon has addressed nearly every complaint C70 users had regarding build quality. The LCD screen now feels more robust, and it actually securely clicks into place instead of just flapping around. If you got an early version of the C70, chances are you had your LCD hinges replaced by Canon at some point, but that's definitely not going to be an issue on the C80. The joystick has also been updated. It's noticeably more responsive and less sticky. Canon did swap its position with buttons 7 and 8, which can be a little disorienting if you're switching back and forth between the C70 and the C80, but overall, it feels more intuitive in this new location. Your thumb just naturally lands there. We have yet another correction to the C70's design at the bottom of the camera, where we now have 2 standard vertical mounting holes instead of the C70's 3 horizontal ones. This was definitely a weird choice by Canon, and one that we're happy to see addressed, as 2 points of contact gives you a much more secure mount when attaching plates to your camera. On the upper left side of the C80, we have the addition of an SDI port, a welcome upgrade and actually one of the key reasons we picked up this camera. SDI is basically a monitoring connection like HDMI, but it's a more robust professional alternative. You can get hyper-thin cables at shorter runs, and it has a lock-in connector which makes it ideal for gimbal use because it's not going to throw your balance or disconnect on you while flying. You can also run SDI and HDMI simultaneously, which is great for setups where I want to use a monitor on the gimbal and send an HDMI signal to a Raven Eye or Teradek transmitter so that Vic can monitor remotely or direct a couple while shooting a portrait session. At the top of the C80, we have a new multi-accessory hot shoe. I don't think this is something we'll get much use out of in the near future, but if you have any compatible accessories, you're going to need to strictly use the BPA30N or A60N batteries for it to work. And finally, on the right hand side, we've got our dual SD card slots. This is a bit of a sticking point for people who are hoping to see at least one CF Express slot, and I totally get it. CF Express cards are faster and even cheaper than SD cards these days, but honestly, we're not that mad about it. We've already got plenty of durable Sony Tough V90 cards, and given the C70 only had SD card slots, we expected just as much for its replacement. I feel that this is a manufacturing decision that comes down to Canon's current delineation of its cinema line. If you want CF Express, you're going to have to move up to something like the C300 Mark III or the C400. But I also think that this is a cost-saving measure that keeps the C80 priced as competitively as it is. Now let's talk resolution, frame rates, and codecs, and finally show off some of the footage we've captured. While the C80 is capable of recording in resolutions up to 6K DCI, I like to think of it as a camera of caveats. The only way to shoot RAW in full frame mode is to shoot at full 6K resolution. No 4K, no 2K, just a full sensor readout. This flavor of 6K RAW is also limited to Cinema Raw LT up to 30p. And if you want to shoot in 6K at all, it has to be in RAW. There's currently no way of recording in a compressed codec at 6K. And while I definitely think that these caveats sound like Canon protecting its high-end cinema lineup, I also think it has something to do with the practical limitations of SD card write speeds, as well as cooling challenges in a body as compact as the C80s. Going down to Super 35 mode, you essentially get a supercharged C70. I say this because in this crop mode, the C80 gets the exact same RAW recording modes as the C70, but at 4.3K instead of just 4K. That means you can shoot in Cinema Raw ST up to 30p and Cinema Raw LT up to 60p, but with about 6% more resolution to play with on a 4K timeline. And just like the C70, if you still want a full frame field of view in Super 35 mode, you can just throw on the 0.71 focal reducer and get the best of both worlds. Outside of RAW, you can shoot an XF-AVC and XF-AVC in both 10-bit intraframe and long gop, from 4K DCI down to 1080p in both full frame and Super 35 modes. Having used the C80 extensively over the past month, I can say that regardless of the codec, this camera makes beautiful images. Our recent audio kit video was shot entirely on the C80 using a mix of RAW, All-I, and long gop footage, and we were impressed at how it performed across the board. We've shot a lot of test footage around our neighborhood in Toronto, and some of our social content in 6K RAW, and the image quality has been consistently impressive. Sorry, that's actually a bit of an understatement. We've been blown away by the quality and detail in these images. I'm not going to get overly scientific or pixel peep side-by-side shots. There are other YouTubers who do that a lot better and with a specificity that I just don't have the patience for. But having shot with the C300 Mark III and C70 over the past 4 years, I'm very familiar with what to expect from them performance-wise, and I'm happy to say that the C80 holds up beautifully against these other cinema cameras. For one, the 12-bit 6K RAW is absolutely stunning. Across every resolution and codec, you'll notice the C80 produces a noticeably sharper image than either the C70 or C300, thanks to that 6K sensor. The C70 has an organic look that is definitely very pleasing, but we find that we prefer the sharper and cleaner image of the C80 and can achieve just as organic of a look in post. The C80 also benefits from a much more balanced color tone. Gone is the not-so-subtle magenta cast that plagued the C70, replaced by a more neutral and balanced color science that arguably feels more filmic. The 6K image is so sharp that you can drop it directly into a 4K timeline at full resolution without any scaling and it will still hold up. While not capable of shooting in Cinema Raw HQ like the C400 or the C300 Mark III, the light and standard versions of RAW on the C80 still achieve bit rates up to 678 megabits per second, producing a clean image with excellent color accuracy and fewer image artifacts than the other codecs in this camera. It's really impressive how good it looks for a compressed RAW format, and we honestly don't need more than this for the level of commercial work that we do. The 4K full-frame XF-AVC image is also fantastic, And while I expected to notice a drop in dynamic range compared to the C70's DGO sensor, that just hasn't been the case. If anything, because of the increased detail from the 6K sensor, it produces a perceptibly better, or at least in less subjective terms, a cleaner image than what we'd expect from the C70, even in tough shooting situations. Having said that, I do find that the C80 is noisier than the C70, up to around 3200 ISO. This is the most obvious downside of losing the DGO sensor, but honestly, it's nothing overwhelming or distracting or anything that we deem requires noise reduction in post. I think this small increase in lumen noise is the only true negative impact of the C80 moving away from DGO, and a small price to pay for the advantages of the back illuminated stacked sensor, which offers faster autofocus and better low light performance overall by gathering light more efficiently. The C70's DGO sensor achieved a greater dynamic range by combining two exposures per frame, one that prioritized your highlights and one that prioritized your shadows. This parallel readout process did achieve greatly reduced noise at the base ISO of 800, but anyone that owns a C70 knows that the image quickly falls apart after 3200 ISO. And the autofocus, though greatly improved through firmware updates, still struggled in less than ideal situations. These are areas where the C80 sensor shines. Which leads us to probably the most hyped about and most misunderstood feature of the C80, its triple base ISO. Like the C400, the C80 features three distinct native ISOs. In C-Log2, C-Log3, and Cinema Raw Light, these are ISO 800, 3200, and 12800. A lot of people, myself included, initially assumed that this meant you could shoot perfectly clean images at those ISOs, and that low light noise was a thing of the past. But that's not exactly how it works. What triple base ISO really means is that at those three ISOs, you're getting the maximum dynamic range from the sensor, not necessarily a noise-free image. So while I don't think my dreams of setting the camera to 12,800 and rocking NDs all day have been realized with the C80, what we do have is a very capable low-light camera that truly outshines the C70's performance. Yes, there is noise at 3200, but it's not overwhelming or displeasing and very easy to clean up in post using neat video. Even without any correction, I don't think this is a level of noise a client would notice or be distracted by. At 12,800, the noise is more pronounced, but it's far less than I'd expect from an image shot at such a high ISO. This base ISO definitely requires some cleanup in post, but not what I would consider extensive or unmanageable. We're actually really impressed by the quality and look of the low light footage coming out of this camera and think that this is one of its greatest strengths. I think a lot of people aren't used to seeing such high quality low light images simply because until recently, it just hasn't been possible. This would definitely be a unique look and feel to embrace for creative portions of the wedding day, and one that couples will definitely appreciate, even if unable to pinpoint exactly what makes these images so special. I think the fact that you aren't sacrificing as much dynamic range as you typically would shooting at high non-native ISOs on other cameras, combined with the oversampling of the 6K sensor, yields a really clean, sharp image that still exists within the realm of Canon's beautiful color science. Another huge advantage of the C80's triple base ISO is the added control you have over how to distribute your 16 stops of dynamic range. When setting the base ISO for the camera, you're simply assigning the optimal native ISO that you'd like to shoot in, but you still have to set an actual ISO for exposure. This means, for example, that you can set your base to 800 and still shoot at ISO 3200, but this would be a lot noisier than if you shot at ISO 3200 with a base ISO of 3200. But there's a special correlation between your base ISO and actual ISO that allows us to further manipulate our dynamic range in a useful way. Shoot below your base ISO, and you prioritize shadow detail at the expense of your highlight detail. Shoot above the base, and you preserve more highlights while sacrificing some of your shadow detail. Yes, you lose a bit of overall dynamic range when not shooting at the native ISO, but with the convenience of directly controlling how the remaining stops of dynamic range are spread, while also keeping our noise in check. For example, if we set our base ISO to 12,800 and then shoot at 6,400 ISO, we're essentially introducing a lot less noise into our image, while retaining more shadow detail that we would likely need in a situation that requires us to shoot at this high of an ISO. Same goes for setting our base to 3200 and shooting at an ISO of 1600. Beyond its low light capabilities, the autofocus performance also gets a noticeable boost on the C80, which features Canon's latest iteration of its dual-pixel autofocus. Compared to the C70 and C300 Mark III, it feels a lot snappier and more intuitive. I find it locks onto subjects faster and can track them more confidently, with or without hats, glasses, even while turning or facing away. Low light autofocus is an area where the C70 always struggled, and something that the C80 handles impressively well. I'm still not fully used to it, and still shocked when I see it perfectly follow a subject in a situation where I know the C70 would have started hunting. This is especially true at higher ISOs, where the C80 is not only able to attain focus, but actually track moving subjects consistently. What I found most impressive, however, is how intuitive and accurate its object tracking is. For the most part, I've always found the tracking feature on the C70 hit or miss and a little too convoluted to use on a regular basis. But on the C80, you simply tap an object on the screen and the camera seamlessly tracks it. In our recent audio kit video, it was able to track a record even after it left and re-entered the frame, a turntable needle, and all the gear we featured, including the tip of a lav mic as I rotated it in my hand. That said, there have been a few changes to how autofocus works, and we're still getting used to how it affects our gimbal operation. In the past, we've always configured our cameras to toggle autofocus between face priority and an AF frame. That setup gave us quick control over where the focus falls, especially useful during moments like a ceremony recessional where face priority could accidentally lock onto a guest in the crowd. In these cases, we prefer placing the AF frame on the bride or groom's body and toggling face priority only when they're closer. On the C80, this one simple function has changed. For one, you can't just toggle face priority detection anymore. It's all lumped under a subject to detect menu. And when assigned to a button, you now have to cycle through people and animal detection before landing back on your AF frame option. It just adds one unnecessary step that can lead to mistakes on the field, especially given that I'll likely never use this animal detection feature. Face detection is also now limited to subjects that fall within your selected AF frame, not your entire shot. There's no way around this unless you have a whole area AF selected. Any AF frame option means your subject has to land within the AF frame zone for face detection to work. I think in the long run, this might turn out to be a good feature that reduces the need to toggle AF modes constantly, but it definitely takes some getting used to after years of muscle memory built on other Canon bodies. Speaking of toggling autofocus on a gimbal, good news. The Sony FS7 grip still works on the C80 like it did with the C70. So if that's a setup you're rocking, you're still in luck. So I mentioned earlier that this is our new favorite camera, and the reason why is actually a lot simpler than any of the features I've listed in this video. For me, the C80 is my new favorite camera because I genuinely want to pick it up and shoot with it. After shooting commercially for over 13 years, we've owned nearly every iteration of Canon cinema line under the C500. We've shot on every prime from the 14L to the 200mm and mounted them on just about every version of the Movi, Ronin, and video monopod you can think of. At some point though, the gear chase just slowed down and gear stopped exciting me the way it used to. Our C70s are solid, but they feel like a 4K refresh of our old C100 Mark IIs. The C300 Mark III was great, but it felt like a pro version of what we already knew. But the C80 feels different. It strikes a perfect balance of new features and creative possibilities, and it's actually fun to shoot with. I'm excited to see how the imperfections of our lenses come to life with a true full-frame field of view. I'm excited to take in every detail of our 6K footage, to shoot in low light, to track the smallest objects across our frame. And honestly, for the creative spark it's already reignited, this camera feels like a priceless addition to our kit. At the same time, I did start this video by saying that I don't think that the C80 is a worthy upgrade to the C70, and I still stand by that. We'll be keeping both our C70s in the kit for the foreseeable future, and don't see any reason why they shouldn't remain there for another few more years. If you're in the market for a new camera, we'd 100% recommend the C80. But if you have a C70, you already own an excellent camera, and while the C80 does offer meaningful improvements, they amount to mostly quality of life upgrades, not jumps in actual image quality. If you need 6K, which, let's be honest, most of us don't, or a full-frame sensor, despite of the fact that you can get a similar field of view on the C70 with the speed booster, then absolutely go for it. But these days we base our gear purchases on two simple questions. One, will it make our lives on set and at events easier? And two, will it improve our final product to the point that a client would actually notice? The C80 definitely checks off that first box, but I don't think it checks the second. Now let me ruin that entire premise by saying that if you have the capital and you're still on the fence, just get it. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching, guys. We hope you found this video useful, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Till next time.